Since 2001, the Broadcasting Board of Governors has recognized excellence in journalism with the David Burke Distinguished Journalism Awards. Named for the first chairman of the board and former president of CBS News and vice president and executive vice president of ABC News, David Burke embodied journalistic integrity. Each year, brave men and women from each of the BBG networks are honored for their exceptional courage, integrity, and professionalism.
This award is just a reflection of what Hausa service are doing in covering the Boko Haram insurgency and other issues in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
This award reinforces our compromise in order to provide free information to the countries like Cuba.
I'm very grateful to receive this honor. I'm very grateful to the continued support from colleagues and RFA leaders and the BBG, and thank you very much.
We would like to thank you for this award.
This is a high appraisal of our work.
It supports and inspires us.
It will help us carry out Radio Liberty's mission with dignity and professionalism.
Because Crimeans have the right to know.
Thank you.
And now, from the Cohen Building Auditorium in Washington, D.C., the 16th Annual David Burke Distinguished Journalism Awards.
Pretty hard to top that. Good afternoon. Sorry, I was almost having too much fun chatting with you all to get this thing started. Good afternoon, and welcome to the 16th Annual David R. Burke Distinguished Journalism Awards. My name's Jeff Trimble. I'm the Deputy Director of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. And today I have the honor of being your host as we celebrate the brave men and women of our networks, the Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Radio Free Asia, the Martis, Office of Cuba Broadcasting, and the Middle East Broadcasting Networks. These awards hold special meaning for me because I knew David Burke. As mentioned in the opening video, he was a titan in the history of broadcast journalism in the United States, and also the first BBG chairman, including in 1997, way back when I joined Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Like most great media managers, he was tough, demanding. I was deeply afraid of the man, and fiercely loyal to the journalists who worked for him, including as a relentless defender of the independence of BBG journalists in the early days as this agency was getting on its feet. So it's appropriate that the journalists we honor today are, as was David Burke, deeply dedicated to the advancement of freedom and democracy through a free exchange of ideas. I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I'd also like to welcome those around the world who are watching on our live stream. For those of you joining in the Cohen Auditorium and elsewhere, a video of today's ceremony will be available later on bbg.gov. And now I have the distinct pleasure to introduce the CEO and Director of the BBG, Mr. John Lansing.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome to our guests and our amazing staff. I also want to recognize our board chair, Ken Weinstein, who's joining us for this great occasion. Ken, where are you? There he is. Welcome, Ken. Today we celebrate the journalists who represent the best of U.S. international media. Now in its 16th year, the David Burke Awards go to those brave men and women who exemplify courage, integrity, and the commitment to truth-telling. They have distinguished themselves through extraordinary talent, hard work, and dedication to the highest standards of professional journalism. Selecting this afternoon's honorees was no easy task. Each of our networks is brimming with journalists dedicated to providing accurate and reliable information. The stories we will hear tonight just scratch the surface of the impact our networks have around the world. Each award carries a small monetary prize that pales in comparison to the priceless and selfless service that they demonstrate every day. We live in a complicated time as journalists. The battle for narratives and the war on truth around the world has made today one of the most dangerous times to be a journalist. Simply being called a journalist is sometimes dangerous in itself. Around the world, press freedom is declining. We see this as oppressive regimes control information, claw back access to the internet, and muffle independent voices. And that makes our mission more relevant than ever: to inform, engage, and connect people around the world in support of freedom and democracy is an undertaking that I don't take lightly. I'm proud to say that you, live that mission every day. What we'll see and hear today is a snapshot of the great work being done by all BBG every day around the world. Now, joining us today is someone who understands these realities very well. Our first keynote speaker, President of Freedom House, Mr. Michael Abramowitz. As you know, Freedom House is an independent organization that analyzes the challenges to freedom, advocates for greater political rights and civil liberties, and supports frontline activists to defend human rights and promote democratic change. Founded in 1941, Freedom House was the first American organization to champion the advancement of freedom globally. Freedom House recognizes that freedom is possible only in environments where governments are accountable to the people, where the rule of law prevails, and freedoms of expression, association, and belief, as well as respect for the rights of minorities and women, are guaranteed. More than 2.5 billion people live in countries that Freedom House designates not free. More than a third of the globe's population, and indeed the overwhelming majority of BBG's audiences. The BBG and its networks seek to be a bridge between men and women living in oppressed societies and the rest of the world. We believe that when we lose independent voices, we run the risk of conceding the information space to hostile regimes, extremists, and rogues. It will take all of our effort to ensure that this doesn't occur or expand further. I'm especially pleased that Michael Abramowitz, who became the president of Freedom House earlier this year, can be with us today for this celebration. Mike himself is a journalist, having done distinguished work as national editor and White House correspondent for the Washington Post. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Michael Abramowitz.
Thank you, John, for those kind remarks, and thank you, Jeff, for inviting me to do this special event. I am deeply honored and, in fact, thrilled to be here, and I wanted to, first of all, just send my warmest congratulations to all of today's honorees. As a former journalist, he said I was a current journalist. I actually think I'm a former journalist. I stand in awe of your skills and your bravery. The freedom to produce and consume independent, fact-based journalism is under grave threat around the world. Our findings show that press freedom has dropped to its lowest levels in 13 years. Authoritarian regimes have been gaining strength, and we are in the midst of a vicious cycle of restrictive media control, which supports sustained political power, which enables still tighter media control. Countries that we had come to take for granted as nearly or fully consolidated democracies have been turning the other way, sometimes with alarming momentum. There are many drivers behind this trend. One of the most prominent is the evolution of the internet from a medium that bolstered the flow of news and information to one that can be manipulated to increase control and disinformation. More and more governments are constraining their populations by disrupting mobile and other forms of internet service, especially at sensitive moments, such as during protests and election campaigns. The internet still gives voice to the masses, but it is a tool of the powerful as well. The spread of authoritarian control beyond a country's own borders is intensifying. While Ukraine and its neighbors are accustomed to Russia's disinformation campaigns, the scale of Russian interference in European and US media is new and disturbing. That Russia would exploit the openness of our societies to push its own destabilizing agenda leaves us feeling vulnerable and naive. Yet the knee-jerk policy responses of further restrictions can be just as harmful to our powerful tradition of a free press. To continue the essential work in such challenging environments, journalists must defy the odds. Whether covering a protest in Burundi or keeping an independent newspaper open in Hungary, reporters today face unprecedented threats. 5 journalists have been killed in Mexico so far this year. Gunmen stormed a TV station in Afghanistan last week. And reporters worldwide must contend with raids on their homes and offices, as well as arbitrary detention. But we can remain optimistic because people are fighting back, and journalists can be creative and circumvent barriers. They must hold true to their values and stay steadfast in the face of abuse. The work of the BBG is absolutely critical to this fight. During the Cold War, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty reached an audience of millions and was the dominant media in parts of Central Europe. It informed people of the Chernobyl meltdown and the underground activities of Poland's Solidarity movement. Today, your challenge is to develop media as innovative as Radio Free Europe has been in the past, but are relevant for the world we live in today. Today, the enemies of freedom are smarter and more sophisticated, controlling the media through nebulous networks of cronies. Under communism, we had to do battle with what was called the big lie, that communism represented a new and more just form of democracy. Today, we have to combat thousands of lies about the deficiencies of democracy. Radio Free Europe was a remarkable and daring experiment, and we need to be just as daring and experimental today in dealing with the new forms of anti-democratic threat to truth. One small story to me illustrates the significance of what we do. A friend of mine was traveling in a rural part of northern Myanmar in 2010 when the possibility of democracy still appeared remote and the people there lived in fear of the military dictatorship. There, sitting in front of his house, was a man listening to Radio Free Asia on his small radio. I'd like to think that that man's vote in 2015 was influenced by what he was able to learn that day. Freedom House stands with BBG in the struggle to uphold press freedom around the world. For nearly 40 years, we have published our annual Press Freedom Report, enabling us to identify trends and highlight emerging threats. For the past 8 years, we have also published a report on internet freedom, which covers many press freedom issues. It's just out today, and I recommend it to you. It's recording the 7th consecutive year of overall decline in internet freedom, and it has quite disturbing findings. In addition to our annual reports, Freedom House has been providing direct assistance to some of the journalists who put themselves in harm's way in the line of their work. We support journalists in some of the world's most challenging environments, providing funds for acute needs such as emergency medical care after physical attacks, legal assistance in the face of criminal proceedings, and aid to leave the country amid threats of assassination. By helping these journalists to continue their investigations and reporting, we have kept information flowing in war zones and forced dictators to face uncomfortable truths, just as you at BBG do. Each of these actions may only chip away at the problem, but together, in partnership with BBG and with other like-minded organizations, we can together be a formidable force. We really respect BBG. We see you as a strong partner of Freedom House, and we stand with you. We thank you for your work, and once again, I want to congratulate all the honorees for the amazing work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. I respectfully disagree with your characterization of yourself. I don't believe there's such a thing as a former journalist. I think there is such a thing as a recovering journalist, but I'm not sure once you've been in the business you ever truly get out of it. Thank you very much for your words. We're grateful, and we're better at BBG for the important work Freedom House does to promote and defend freedom, including free media and the safety of journalists around the world. Emphasizing the fundamental role of a free press and free exchange of ideas for a more informed and safer world is a charge that every one of us in the BBG family takes up each day. Speaking of the BBG family, it's time to begin the awards portion of this program and honor the 2017 Burke Award recipients. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Voice of America Director Amanda Bennett.
Thank you, Jeff, John, Michael. When Iraqi forces, together with an international coalition, began the battle to retake Mosul from ISIS militants in October of 2016, Voice of America had an important decision to make. Who should cover the operation? You know, whoever we chose, this assignment was going to test his or her courage, strength, and journalistic skill. And there's one more thing. Unlike many of our commercial colleagues who can afford security teams, field producers, translators, fixers, this reporter was going to have to work largely on his or her own, filming alone in dangerous regions, carrying their own gear. And that's exactly who we got. One brave, reliable, outstanding correspondent who produced an incredible amount of reporting while never breaking under pressure.
In October of 2016, Voice of America Middle East correspondent Heather Murdock began a 5-month journey to document the coalition forces' efforts to retake the city of Mosul from ISIS militants. Throughout her time in the conflict zone, Heather was self-sufficient, doing her own camera work, lugging her own gear, and finding her own sources. And she produced some of the most heartfelt news coverage of a conflict much of the world has forgotten. Heather told the personal stories of war, as well as reported on the advances and setbacks of the Iraqi and Kurdish forces. Her reports helped VOA audiences track the forces backed by U.S. troops and understand what they faced in the operation. Through it all, Heather was tireless. From mid-October to late December, she produced more than 40 web, TV, and photo stories. She appeared multiple times on VOA and affiliate and TV programs, and she never faltered. She remained calm and rock steady, providing much-needed information to her audiences.
Heather Murdock joined Voice of America as our Cairo correspondent in January of 2015. But for 5 years before that, she had been a freelancer working for us from locations such as Yemen, Ethiopia, Nigeria. In 2011, Heather went to Cairo to help us cover the Arab Spring uprising. This assignment tested Heather's courage, integrity, and her immense knowledge and grasp of the conflict zone. Her constant reporting provided the Voice of America News Center with original content, which in turn was shared with audiences around the world through VOA's language services. Heather has certainly proved to be one of the most capable war correspondents VOA's News Center has had in decades. Please help me welcome Heather Murdock.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I am a bit overwhelmed by this honor, which is made possible by the commitment of VOA and the BBG to long-term, in-depth reporting of world-changing events, which I was honored to witness. And these events did change the world. The Islamic State militants have largely been driven out of Iraq and Syria, but what they have left behind is almost complete devastation, emotional, economic, and many, many, many lives have been lost. It's way too soon to even start to count the bodies. But it also leaves us with an opportunity to continue our coverage to find out what happened and why it happened. Now, Islamic State militants themselves, a lot of them are in jail, and a lot of them are speaking out about what happened. The families, the victims, and the families of the militants themselves are speaking. So I'm looking forward to continuing coverage in the Middle East and continuing to use this opportunity to find out what happened, so hopefully it does not happen again. Thank you.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Tom Kent.
Good afternoon, everyone. In Uzbekistan, freedom of expression and freedom of the press are virtually non-existent. The cost of trying to do independent journalism inside that country can be threats, detention, and beatings. In 2005, in retaliation for RFA-RL's unflinching coverage of a massacre in the city of Andijan, the Uzbek government closed down our bureau. It also blocked access to our Uzbek website. But people are stubborn about getting the news they can trust. With a loyal audience, the clever use of new technology, and deep connections within the country, RFA-RL's Uzbek service remains one of the most trusted sources of local Uzbek news for audiences inside and outside the country. Here's a closer look at our Uzbek service.
To answer extreme media repression in Uzbekistan, RFA-RL's Uzbek service, known locally as Radio Ozodlik, is pioneering strategies to use new communication technologies to gather and distribute the news and build and engage local audiences remotely. With more than 1 million subscribers across several social media platforms and an average of 6 million views each month on YouTube, Radio Ozodlik provides a vital means to bypass the government's extreme censorship. The impact of Radio Ozodlik's reporting has been far-reaching. In August and September, Radio Ozodlik became the go-to source for news concerning the failing health and eventual death of Uzbek President Islam Karimov. By the time Uzbekistan's state-run information agency declared the news of his death, Radio Ozodlik had been posting on social media for days. Radio Ozodlik's reporting has also prompted the Uzbek Security Agency to launch nationwide inspections of nursery schools after the service published local testimony about multiple cases of child abuse and after-hours brothels being run in nursery schools in the south. But this reporting comes at great risk. Courageous stringers denied accreditation by the Uzbek government face tremendous threats on a daily basis. And Ozodlik journalists, most of whom are banned from entering their homeland, have had property seized by the government and have had relatives persecuted and imprisoned. Their bravery has allowed RFA-RL's Uzbek service to break stories from around the country each day, but more important, to give Uzbekistan's citizens a powerful means to speak truth to power in one of the least free societies in the world.
Ozodlik's staff has assembled a massive network of citizen journalists who communicate with our staff through encrypted messaging apps. Residents in even the most remote villages turn to Ozodlik to learn of breaking news, to publicize corruption by local officials, and just to document their everyday lives. Uzbekistan's new president, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, has taken some initial moves toward opening up the country and perhaps permitting a freer press. We welcome any developments that would allow us once again to discharge our professional mission from inside Uzbekistan. Please help me welcome the chief of the RFA-RL Uzbek service, Alisher Siddiqui.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. On behalf of Uzbek team of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, thank you for your acknowledgement of our humble contribution to promoting democracy in one of the world's most unfree societies. Thank you. We are honored by the recognition of the Burke Award for our commitment and our impact. More than 10 years ago, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty was banned and expelled from Uzbekistan for revealing atrocities committed by security service in the city of Andijan, where hundreds of citizens were massacred while protesting against the government. Closing RFA was supposed to wall off the country from information, guaranteeing the autocratic regime freedom from scrutiny, criticism, and accountability for its actions. But things have turned out very differently for this regime. Radio Ozodlik, as we all know in Uzbek, is the most popular independent source of information in Uzbekistan now, and leading Uzbek language media on all digital platforms, social networks, and messaging applications. We don't have a single official reporter on the ground, but we rely on the biggest network of citizen journalists that we built over the past 10 years. Here are some numbers. Uzbekistan has a population of 30 million, but our social followers are more than 1 million. So we have over 5 million views on YouTube every month, 4.5 million listens and downloads of our daily podcasts. As a proof of our impact, Uzbek service reporting has contributed to numerous changes in the government policy over the recent years. Our reporting was instrumental in exposing abuses that led the government to abolish the death penalty, the ban of long-standing use of child labor in the cotton fields. We are the only media that regularly reports on LGBT and minority issues. Our investigative reporting revealed corruption that led to the arrest of Gulnara Karimova, the daughter of late President Islam Karimov. Of course, I would not be standing here today if not for the work of my 11 brave colleagues, Radio Ozodlik colleagues, who have put everything in line to demand freedom of speech and report the news that no one else would tell. They have sacrificed the right to return to their country, and their relatives are under real and constant threat. They are true heroes and professionals who work every day to try to open this closed society. The Uzbek service began this journey over 60 years ago. Today we are proud not only to keep freedom of speech alive in Uzbekistan, but to keep making the facts a simple reality in people's lives. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Alhurra, way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Staff Director of the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, Emilio Vasquez.
Good afternoon. Cuba has the most repressive media environment in the Western Hemisphere. The government owns and controls all traditional news media and uses these outlets to promote its political goals and deny a voice to the opposition. Journalists for both state and international media risk harassment, intimidation, and detention for any coverage perceived as critical of the government. Scores of journalists are detained each year, including several contributors to the Martis. With changes in U.S.-Cuba relations, rumors and misinformation spread quickly throughout the island. The Martis, however, were there to set the record straight.
In 2012, Cubans defecting to the United States began taking a new route through South and Central America. The dangerous journey could take several months and often cost individuals their life savings. But by 2015, thousands of Cubans were making their harrowing journey. Several nations along the route closed their borders, leaving tens of thousands stranded. Because the Cuban state media neglects to cover any defection, more immigrants seeking a better life continue to plot their way, despite the route being closed. Martí reporter Ricardo Quintana traveled these routes, including to dangerous and remote sites, such as the Darien jungle in Colombia, Puerto Albaldia in Panama, and the drug cartel-controlled territories near the U.S.-Mexico border. Along the way, he documented the dangers of the passage, told the personal stories of sacrifice and hope, and provided Cubans back home with important information about the risky journey. His courageous and excellent reporting helped win the Martís an Emmy for the documentary Cambio de Ruta, and provided Cubans with life-saving information they couldn't get elsewhere.
For almost 20 years, Ricardo has provided Cuban audiences with stories that inform and engage on a variety of important topics. Ricardo started his career as a journalist in Havana, Cuba, but his quest for freedom of speech and expression forced him to leave his family and move to Miami in 1993. There, he continued his work for various local radio stations until 1998, when he was hired as a reporter for Radio Martí. At OCB, he reunited with his audience and started reporting news freely and without censorship. In 2007, he became a multimedia journalist serving all of Martí's platforms. Please join me in welcoming Ricardo Quintana.
Good afternoon. I'm very honored to receive this award. And I accept this award in the name of the thousands of Cubans who left their homes, families, culture, and embarked into the unknown in search of economic improvement, civil liberties, and basic human rights. We know of those who make it, but we don't know how many were left at sea, in jungles and rivers, or killed at the hands of cold-blooded traffickers. Humanizing the issue of immigration has also been part of my work as a journalist, making visible the odyssey of those seeking freedom, democracy, and a better future. And for that, we have to reach distant and unexplored locations, spend time, and even share the plight and feelings of the migrants. I would like to also give credit to those who have accompanied me in this adventure, terrific cameramen Rodolfo Hernandez and Enrique Kiki Lopez. Thank you very much.
Incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the executive editor of Radio Free Asia, Bei Fang.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. North Korea is one of the most repressive media environments in the world. The state-controlled domestic media produce propaganda with the aim of ensuring absolute loyalty to Kim Jong-un. Those found accessing foreign and independent media have been sent to prison camps or, in some cases, executed. We know from interviews with defectors and other sources, however, that Radio Free Asia's Korean language broadcasts are making it into the DPRK, having a big impact on the lives of its citizens, and in some cases, even inspiring them to leave. Our investigative projects can especially benefit our audiences by shedding light on the issues and decisions that directly impact their lives.
Three RFA journalists, Albert Hong, Jae Wong No, and Hee Jung Yang, investigated North Korea's overseas labor throughout the world. Desperate for hard currency, North Korea has been forcibly sending tens of thousands of its citizens abroad to earn cash for the state, dispatching construction workers to the Middle East and Northeast Asia, farmhands to Poland, doctors to staff unlicensed medical facilities across Africa, and waitresses to Cambodia. The journalists' combined efforts, which took them to 7 countries in 4 continents, resulted in an in-depth multimedia series that documented the lives of these workers. They reported on the difficult workplace conditions and the outrageously low wages. But they also exposed dangers, particularly malpractice at North Korean-run health facilities. The impact of the investigative reports was swift and decisive. In April, the Tanzanian government ordered the immediate closure of 2 North Korean medical clinics in Dar es Salaam because the facilities used fake medicine, unqualified doctors, and inefficient treatments that could actually harm patients. The hard work and selfless dedication of these RFA journalists no doubt saved lives and exposed abuses by the North Korean government on its own people.
I can't tell you how proud I am of these journalists, whose fastidious work is emblematic of the passion and dedication of RFA's Korean service. From Siem Reap, Cambodia, to the farms and shipyards in Poland, our reporters never lost sight of the truth. Their project not only led to the closure of the medical clinics in Tanzania, but was also cited by Congress as evidence of Kim Jong-un's regime using forced overseas labor as a means of obtaining hard currency, and contributed to the UN Security Council including the overseas labor issue in its newest sanctions against the DPRK. Please help me welcome Albert Hong and Hee Jung Yang. Unfortunately, Jae Won No could not be here today because he's based in Seoul.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to express my gratitude to BBG for this honor, to RFA leadership for the great opportunity, especially our executive editor, Bei Fang, who helped conceive this project and also made it a reality, and to all my colleagues at RFA for their support. I would not have done it without the help of so many friends, colleagues, fellow journalists, human rights activists, and researchers not only in the US, but in the Netherlands, Malta, Germany, Poland, and Norway. I am humbled and feel blessed to be here today, and will strive to be a better journalist until the day when I can interview the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un. In a word, the ordinary North Koreans can enjoy the life that we take it for granted for today. Thank you very much.
I was so nervous and even scared when I entered the North Korean clinic in Tanzania, but at this moment, I think it's more than that. I'm shaking. As you know, still, North Korean authorities is looking for the foreign currency out there, and many North Korean workers in the horrible environment and everywhere. So I believe that we have to find that what they're doing out there and let people know it and stop it. So I thank the BBG for this honor, and also I thank the executive editor, Bei Fang. She gave me a wonderful opportunity for this story and support a lot. Thanks again, and thank you all. Thank you.
Well, let's hope you get that interview with the North Korean leader soon. That would be a story. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of the Middle East Broadcasting Networks, Ambassador Alberto Fernandez.
Ongoing violence and repression make Iraq one of the world's deadliest places for journalists. Political tension, corruption, authoritarianism, as well as the broader conflict, severely undermine the ability of journalists to carry out independent reporting. This is such an ability and a capacity that is needed in Arab media today, where independence and balance is at a premium. Iraqi journalists face assault and harassment in the course of their work and are often subject to retaliatory attacks for their reporting. Several journalists have been killed and wounded while covering the conflict against ISIS, and the extremist group control over territories in northwestern Iraq has only been overturned with great sacrifice. Since the beginning of the ultimately victorious battle to retake Mosul and other parts of northern Iraq, beginning in October 2016, Alhurra-Iraq journalists have been embedded with the heroic Iraqi security forces and Peshmerga troops, bringing viewers the latest news from the very front of the line. The price of this reporting has been very steep.
Throughout the 2016 campaign to end ISIS's brutal rule in Mosul, 3 Alhurra-Iraq journalists risked their lives to report on developments close to the front lines. Correspondent Abdul Hamid Zabari and cameramen Yasser Salim and Johan Saeed worked tirelessly to bring an accurate picture of the reality in Mosul. Often, they embedded with Iraqi and Peshmerga troops to bring viewers the latest news from the front lines. They also created intimate portraits of families fleeing, struggling to survive in the midst of war, suffering from injuries at hospitals, and living in camps for internally displaced people. But the risks were great. While embedded with Iraqi counterterrorism forces outside of Mosul, the 3 journalists came under attack. Zabari and Salim were hit by shrapnel, and Saeed rushed them to an emergency medical facility. Even following this ordeal, they remained committed to their pursuit of the truth and continued to report on the fight for Mosul. Through their courage and determination, as well as their deep understanding of the area, the Mosul team of Zabari, Salim, and Saeed provided a clear picture of the high-stakes conflict. Their reporting has provided valuable and accurate information to the people of Iraq and throughout the Middle East, equipping them with the information needed to rebuild their lives.
Abdul Hamid Sabari, Yasser Salim, and Johan Saeed are motivated by the deeply held belief that the job of equipping the Iraqi population and people throughout the Arabic-speaking Middle East with accurate information about the important issues of our times are necessary to improve society and worth the risks involved. Unfortunately, these brave men could not be with us here today in Washington, but they have sent along these messages from Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan.
نيابة عن زميلي جوهان وياسر نقدم شكرنا لبي بي جي على منحنا جائزة ديفيد بورك. يشرفنا قبول هذه الجائزة. إن تواجد شبكة مثل الحرة-عراق مهم جدا، حيث تقوم بتسليط الضوء على أهم الأمور والمواضيع التي تهم العراقيين وتكشف لهم أبعادها وتأثيراتها على حياتهم من خلال اعتماد منهج موضوعي ومتوازن في تغطية الأخبار، رغم كل ما يعترض العمل الصحفي من مخاطر كبيرة في العراق كتلك التي واجهتنا في الموصل. لا شك إن العمل الذي نقوم به له أهمية خاصة، فهو ليس مجرد وظيفة بالنسبة لنا، بل مهمة إنسانية وأخلاقية ومهنية أوكلت إلينا وعلينا القيام بها بأفضل وجه. أشكركم مرة أخرى على دعمكم المتواصل.
Thank you for that message, Abdulhamid, Yasser, and Johan. Your work and your words resonate with us some 6,000 miles away. The resilience and bravery of these three professionals embody the mission of U.S. international media and demonstrate the very best ideals of our profession. And thank you all very much.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Alberto. Now, I have the honor to invite BBG Board Chairman Ken Weinstein to introduce our next speaker. Ken?
Thank you, Jeff. I just want to say how absolutely honored I am to be here and how inspiring it is to see the incredible work of our brave journalists in the field and the impact that it's having. And I'm so proud also of our incredible management team here that leads the BBG on a daily basis. Our next honored guest, Robin Creel, is a CNN international anchor and correspondent currently based at CNN World Headquarters in Atlanta. She joined CNN in 2015 as the East Africa correspondent. Prior to joining CNN, Creel had held various positions with South African television station ENCA from 2008 to 2015, including Chief Africa Correspondent. She began her career in local news as a reporter at KWTX in Waco, Texas. Throughout her career, she's won a number of reporting accolades, including an Edward R. Murrow Award for in-depth series reporting. In 2011, Creel was recognized by First Lady Michelle Obama for what the First Lady termed courageous reporting from Zimbabwe. Creel holds a master's in war studies from King's College London and degrees in broadcast journalism and musical theater from Texas Christian University. She was born and raised in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. She's married and has an absolutely adorable 15-month-old son, Lincoln, who's out there somewhere and misses his mom dearly. Without any further ado, I'd like to have Robin Creel on the stage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me to attend this extremely prestigious event, and a huge congratulations to the winners of this year's David Burke Award. Amazing work. I'm so impressed. I asked how much time I had for this speech, and they said 3 to 5 minutes, but like any good broadcaster, I plan to go over my time limit by about 30 seconds. In 2007, I was back home in Zimbabwe filming a group of women who had taken to the streets to demonstrate against the government. They'd marched to the police station to protest the fact that there was no money in the country to pay school fees, no electricity, and long lines for bread and fuel. It was a desperate time in my country's history. As sometimes happens, you'll well know, when you're staring down the lens of a video camera, one gets tunnel vision. And when searching for that perfect shot, before I knew it, I was no longer a safe distance away, but very close to the action. And so when the police began viciously beating the women with batons, I was caught up in it. Although I didn't know at the time, with so much adrenaline coursing through my veins, that I was falling down on the floor repeatedly and couldn't stand up. It wasn't until one officer lifted me off the ground by my ponytail and hit me across the face that I realized what was going on. They confiscated my camera and took me to jail. We managed to talk my way out of staying in jail, and when I arrived home, I called my former college professor and mentor, John Miller, who is here today. I told him what had happened, and he said, "You have the story of a lifetime here. Write it, edit it, and let me do the rest." And with that, he called his former contacts at networks around the United States. Voice of America was one, NPR, CNN, and ABC. Within 24 hours, the story of how Zimbabwean police beat peaceful women who were simply marching for a better life for themselves was being broadcast around the world. Journalism is twofold. There are the field people, the correspondent, the cameraman, the stringer, the translator, the people out there in the thick of things who can never wear nice shoes because they will inevitably end up in mud or other substances. And then there are the people back at headquarters, the managers, the producers, the digital disseminators. Neither roles are easy, and there's always a healthy amount of friction between the two. In the field, we like to joke and say that people in the office need to look out of the window once in a while. I'm forever grateful to John Miller and other bosses I've had who have been on the other end of the phone when I've called with a story and done the work to get that story out, because it's also not easy. But it's people like him, those who say why, but it's people like him, those who don't say why, but rather why not, who do the work to put stories that win awards on the airwaves. As for the people in the field, yeah, it's hard sometimes, scary sometimes extremely frustrating, but it's also great fun, and in even the most dire of circumstances, it's often pretty funny. But the fact of it is that we can leave at the end of an assignment. We can leave all that drama there, sometimes accompanied by threats. We can leave it behind. While I was working in Zimbabwe as a freelance journalist, at times I was working as a stringer and fixer for other journalists. They would sneak in because international journalists were not being granted permission to report from the country, and we would do the report, and then if things got hairy, they would sneak out, but I would stay, and my family would stay, and the situation just got worse, and we faced daily threats. When they discovered we were reporting, they raided our house, and when they couldn't find me, they imprisoned my mother. And so now in my career, and I cannot stress this enough, I believe it's so incredibly important that for us as foreign correspondents, but also for the managers, the digital disseminators, whoever in the newsroom, to not forget about the people we leave on the ground. The stringers, the fixers, those who can't leave the country when the story airs. Because in some cases, it might have grave consequences for them. They can't escape the power cuts, the poor medical services when their child gets malaria, and they can't escape the police brutality. They have to stay and live through it while we jet off to the next crisis or move on to the next bit of breaking news as it flashes on our screens. So please, let's not forget about them the next time we need a story, till the next time we need a story. They risk their lives just as we as journalists do, and probably risk a lot more at the same time. Finally, and I just wanted to say, I'm sure the winners of the David Burke Award would agree with me on this, that for the people around the world in countries that don't enjoy the same liberties of freedom of speech as the United States, you guys, we, are considered the bastion of journalism. The journalism standards here in America are unmatched, and the rigorous standards in so many newsrooms to interrogate a story to make sure it's fair and accurate are unparalleled. But we have to fight to keep it that way. Now, I believe we have to fight harder than ever, for many reasons, ranging from political ones to the digital explosion when suddenly everyone thinks that they're a journalist, to fake news, to talk radio, and to actual fake news being presented as real and the constant push for higher ratings. We as journalists working in America cannot buckle under the pressure because people say nasty things about us online or call us fake news. This is what the US news industry is made of. The rest of the world looks to us for guidance and for leadership. And most importantly, they look to us as an example of how journalism should be done. Let's fight to keep it that way. Thank you so much. And once again, a huge congratulations to the winners. I'm humbled to be in your presence today. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin, for those words, and Ken for your introduction. I asked Robin to stay here for a moment, and John Miller, if you can do so, please come on up and join us on stage, because I'm a lucky guy. A long, long time ago, in a galaxy, no, it's just something else. I have the distinct privilege of recognizing two incredible journalists who gathered bold reporting on Zimbabwe back in 2007 and won a 2008 Burke Award for it. However, they were unable to receive the award at that time due to physical security concerns in Zimbabwe. We have the 2008 awards here with us, the original ones, which have been lovingly cared for over the years, including most recently somewhere on Jim Fry's desk, if Jim is here. And we want to get these awards to their rightful owners. Freelance reporters Robin Creel and John Miller, who worked with VOA's Central News Division, received the award for their series on life in Zimbabwe. Our former colleague David Borghita, a supervising editor at the time who nominated the journalists, said, and I quote, "The global audience had seen little of what has been going on in Zimbabwe because the government controls what is seen and heard. This series provided that rare glimpse into real life in Zimbabwe," end quote. Their work showed the importance of reporting objective news in places where free press is stifled and where not only threats to journalists persist, but journalism itself is considered a crime. Robin, John, please accept, better late than never, your original award from 2008. Congratulations. I'm going to read you the dedication here. Broadcasting Board of Governors, David Burke Distinguished Journalism Award, John Miller, Robin Creel, in recognition of your dedication to the advancement of the cause of freedom and democracy through free exchange of ideas as exhibited by your original work. You have enlightened audiences and had an impact on their lives in a lasting, meaningful way. And as such, on behalf of the board, I am proud to honor you with this award signed by James K. Glassman, Chairman, Broadcasting Board of Governors. Congratulations. I don't know about you, I'm blown away by what we've just experienced here. What impressive journalistic acumen and grit have been on display here today. These awardees are indeed exceptional journalists. They're not the only ones. There are so many talented people in front of and behind the scenes at the BBG networks that make this level of work happen every day. And if you don't mind, I'd like to quickly recognize some of those behind-the-scenes people, the terrific work done by the communications people and others here at BBG and from all the networks who made today's ceremony come together. If you helped out pulling this thing together, will you stand up and be recognized, please? Don't be shy. Thanks to everyone, the journalists here, for your rich, compelling reporting in the face of challenging conditions and for your courage and commitment to the BBG mission. And with that, thank you all for attending this year's Burke Awards. Please join me in giving another round of applause to our winners. And now please stay with us and enjoy light refreshments at the reception in the hallway just outside. And please make sure to visit each of the 5 network tables out there. They have some amazing additional fresh work to show you. Thank you all very much.